Hello and welcome to Verity Babs Art, where I talk to my friends about art. Today I spoke to comedian Emily Bampton and we spoke about the work of Charlotte Eddy, we spoke about collecting artworks and spoke about how important it is to see yourself represented in the art you consume. I'm here with Emily. Emily, please introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm Emily. I know Verity through improv and comedy. I live in Oxford. I work in finance but want to be a comedian. Yeah, I think that's most of it. I did a bit of stand up and then the world shut down, so clearly nobody's on my side with the whole comedian thing.
Almost as a direct consequence.
It was. It couldn't like correlation equals causation as far as I'm concerned.
So why don't you introduce the piece you've chosen for us today?
So the piece is called Lightness by Charlotte Eddy. And I'm actually in the process of purchasing a copy of the print, and I've never seen it in real life. I've only sort of seen it online, and I don't have a large or expensive sort of art collection, but it's something that I'm always kind of thinking about and looking at things and sort of planning to pick bits. And I think I must have just been like mindlessly clicking through Instagram. I think a different piece of hers popped up, and I went through to a site that had lots of was selling loads of different prints from all ages and variations and stuff, and had a lot of modern things on there. And I just completely fell in love with like her style and everything she did. So I think the original piece that I saw was a piece called Pools, which is a lot darker, and I really liked that, but it felt kind of a bit sort of a little bit desolate. And I remember then scrolling through and seeing Lightness, and it's so bright. I think it kind of looks like heaven, to be honest, like what I would imagine heaven to look like if I were religious. I mean, if I'm going to go anywhere, I'd quite like to go there. It's very pretty. And it's got all the water and the sort of architecture and the colour and the clouds, and it's just stunning. Like, it just looks like something out of a dream. So yeah, I just thought it was really vibrant, and I completely fell in love with it and have had it on my to buy list for a while, and have been kind of putting money away. And over sort of when lockdown happened and I stopped going to the pub, I was like, oh cool, I can do this now. Which is a very privileged position to be in, because I know that was not the case for lockdown for a lot of people. But yeah.
It's the first time I've seen this or her or any of Charlotte's work.
Hmm.
And the thing that struck me most about seeing it is it's this really remarkable sort of combination of very sort of digital. What was the name of that game that was like Hablo? Like these kind of internet games of the like early noughties with these sort of staircases and this very like digital block colours.
Hmm.
That she's combined with this almost sort of Japanese style sort of cloud and water scenes. It seems like a really interesting combination of like two different genres.
It's a real contrast. They still look like one complete place and one complete world. I love the figure as well. It's a figure that she uses in quite a lot of her work. She does tapestries and all sorts, and you see it repeated. This woman has my hair and my skin tone, and in this particular piece, it's just a dark figure. It's completely black, but in other pieces, you can see her features a bit more. That always really draws me to an artist, because you don't see people that look like me in paintings or prints a lot, and you have to sort of seek that out. So I always find that I really connect with that. And even though it's a really small part of this specific print, I know what she's going for because I've seen her other work, and it's really nice to have that included, even though it's just quite a small piece of it.
And it's one of those things as well where it's super important to remember that like these sort of throwaway characters that might be tiny in a painting, why have they got to be white? And when all of your throwaway characters that aren't the main focus of the piece are all Caucasian, it just re-emphasizes this idea that Caucasian is default.
The default,
Right.
exactly, in all
Yeah.
media.
So actually it's super nice in this piece that even though it's not like the main character, it's not a portrait, the
Mm.
fact that she's not Caucasian
Mm.
is super important in reminding us that, that it's, it just shouldn't be default.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, you can see her hair. Like, you wouldn't usually have that if you saw a woman. If you saw a black, a black outline of a woman, it would be with straight hair, and you can see what would be sort of the outline of me, as it were. She has like big curly hair and she has an afro, and that's really, really refreshing to see reflected. And that always, I think you see yourself reflected in art, and that's what draws you to it. And it may be a certain element of your character or what you physically look like, but yeah, it's something that I see rarely, so I connected with a lot.
It's one of those things that is one of those quiet privileges that you never even really need to think about that much as a white woman, is every time I see a woman painted in anything, you know, before like 1980, if there's a woman in it, I can completely relate because it's a white woman doing something, right? So
yeah, exactly.
These sort of inequalities that you wouldn't necessarily think of as like in your top 3 list of inequalities that are happening.
Yeah, I'm not in any paintings.
yeah, exactly. You'd be like, you know, pay gap, brutality, and you know, you have these really like
systemic things.
Yeah, these systemic causes, and then but then you realise that, you know, where are any black women in paintings where they're not portrayed as help, basically?
Yeah, but very rarely the focal point of anything. Like, you don't see, for the most part, you know, I live in Oxford, and you know Oxford, like, you can walk through all these museums and see all these portraits. I don't think I've ever noticed a portrait of a black person in sort of the art section, as it were. You see it in like in the Ashmolean, for instance, they have portrait galleries, and I've walked through them. There may well be, now I'm saying it, I'm sure I'm wrong, but you know, you have to go to the history section, the museum section, to see black people represented. You don't see it in the portrait gallery side of it.
This idea that black culture is anthropology and white culture is culture.
Yes.
And it's this fallacy that basically the idea that the West is the blueprint for progress. At the time that we're recording this, we're week 3 into the Black Lives Matter protests following the murder of George Floyd. And I think the art world generally, and you know, loads of different areas of society are really having to take like a proper look at what is going on in their companies, in systems they believe in, that may on the surface look fine and dandy. Like, as a white person, you have to do that uncomfortable thing of being like, right, okay, where are the examples where I have this bias? It's not enough to not be racist, you have to be anti-racist, and you have to realise that like there is stuff that you've grown up with that is going to be there, and you've got to work on getting rid of it, right?
And I guess in the art world, particularly, to create a shift, it's going to be a huge, well, hopefully more of a focus and investment in artists of colour, in black artists, and having that put at the forefront.
And it's almost like what we were saying about this kind of side character, in that it's not enough to have one exhibition a year celebrating black artists.
Yeah,
you have to have black artists in everything you're doing.
Yeah, it needs to be a whole shift. I think having particular days and having particular months for these things is helpful and was helpful, but in the day and age that we are in now, no, you need to have comprehensive diversity policy. You need to make sure that your funding's split you know, equally and fairly. You need to do anti-bias training within all facets of society, within all medias, because I mean, media is so important and art's only a small part of it, in like the sort of painting print sense that we're discussing it today. But one of the biggest effects on me has been not seeing people that look like me in the media, and only really seeing that now as I'm in my early 20s. I'm a lot lighter than a lot of black people, and I'm mixed race, and that is actually now being shown a lot more, but still darker women are not being portrayed. So girls, young girls, young children who are a lot darker than me are going to have a very similar experience to the one I had, not seeing themselves portrayed. We need to push it even further, and I think we keep getting to a place where it's like, oh, we've done it now. We've done it. Like, oh, you have a day, you have a month, you got a bit of funding. Oh, we're putting, you know, mixed race women in films or in TV. So there are black people around. And that's sort of like, oh, we've done it, and it's taken this again. That's not enough, and we need to push it further. What did you study? Like, what was the?
Yeah, so I had like a very, very Western, Caucasian-centric arts education.
Mm-hmm.
And there were options, I believe, that were world art. And world art is like a big euphemism that museums and universities use to be like all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So we've got all of the French masters and, you know, stuff happening in America and stuff happening in Britain. And then world art.
Mm.
The idea that everywhere that's not France,
Everything else
everywhere that's
that
not
go in
France,
this, yeah.
England or America is the same. And I had an interesting sort of clash in my timetable. So what they had was different columns and you'd pick a module from, and one of them was non-Western art was an option. But because of the way the columns fell, it meant that my non-Western art option was American art. So
Yeah.
as if you couldn't get more Western. And it was interesting in that that was the course, the only course where I ever looked at paintings of black bodies
Yeah.
at all. And it was always under horrible circumstances.
Yeah.
We covered Frederick Douglass, which was obviously amazing, and we covered Carrie Mae Weems, which was brilliant. All the histories that I've ever been taught throughout school of like black histories, which is just history, right?
Yeah.
It starts with slavery, which is just,
well, it doesn't.
Exactly.
I have a friend who's just finished a degree in English at Cambridge, and she said exactly the same thing, and this is in a completely different field. There was sort of all these things around specific literature, which was white dudes, and then there was like one other vehicle for her to go off and study anything else. And there also wasn't support with that, because it was like, oh, if you want to do that, that's fine, you can do that, but you need to go off and find it. If you want to do this thing, we have loads of resources, but if you want to look into this, just go off, see how you get on, kind of thing. Increasingly now, and it was inaccurate, at the time, to split it into the West and black people only, like the only history of it being slavery, but like British art is black women, and it's black, and it's people of color now. And I think the fact that it's still being taught in quite a linear, backwards way is unproductive in like going into the modern art world, where like black people are British too, and the black British experience should be captured in art.
I found this when studying art history, is just to go, people know enough about Manet. He's had his time. He's had plenty of time. People know enough about Turner. People know enough about, contemporary artists like Hirst. They've had a great inning. We've got to like dismantle those systems. But obviously, the people who are upholding those systems, I'm not saying, like curators and, people who work in museums necessarily, but there is a thing of, these huge museums are funded by oil companies and they're funded by BP, and they desperately want that system to stay in place.
Yes.
And it's interesting seeing stuff that's being produced by like Extinction Rebellion at the moment. It's all part of the same thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
it all weaves into it.
Yeah, like you can't have environmental justice without racial justice. We can't have freedom from capitalism without racial justice.
We have to dismantle the same system in order to get equality in all those areas, so of course they intersect.
And so with lightness, Charlotte has also collaborated with another artist of colour, Tishk Barzanji.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Well, I was going to struggle with Charlotte Eddy, because I was going to go with Edie, but then I was like, maybe it's Ede, and then I was like, well, I'll get Emily to say it first.
Well, I'm to be fair, I'm not even sure. I
think now at some point in the video we've used all options. So
yes.
Charlotte, please comment in. So is art something that visual art something that you consume a lot of?
Yeah, like I do follow a lot of artists on Instagram. I've kind of curated Instagram to be quite a positive visual space. So I follow a lot of different artists and creators and photographers and stuff like that on there. I'm a bit obsessed with the idea of the house that I live in like 20 years time having pieces that I've collected over time. And I guess this is probably the first sort of the most money I've ever invested in that, but I don't think I've ever spent more than sort of 30 or 40 pounds on something. I felt a bit funny because I didn't know, what do you pay for art? What should you pay for art? Am I the type of person who should be buying art? It felt like quite a grown-up step in that direction, and sort of coveting something for so long and then putting money into it. And I guess that's another barrier to consuming it and having it, is people's financial resources to be able to purchase things. And of course you don't have to purchase things, but it's lovely if you connect with something to be able to. And sort of me with my like 30, 40, 50 year plan to have all these walls covered with things, if you aspire to that, then yeah, you want to have things and memories and things that spark feelings and make you feel good surrounding you. So I'm working on having like a physical collection, but I do consume a lot in general as well. I don't know a lot, and I think that's another barrier to buying art or doing something like this and talking about it. Like, most of the painters that you just reeled off, I don't know who they are. I've heard of Turner, that's about it. And I think that is quite intimidating. And then again, like, doubling that with not really learning about, when I did do art, you know, I did art in secondary school, you didn't learn about artists of colour, and then you don't see necessarily yourself portrayed in art. It's another compounding thing, because obviously class is a huge part of that, that a lot of people feel intimidated by art, but I think if you add race to it, it's compounded again.
Also, this idea of like the art world is
exactly, the art world,
it manages to be simultaneously ambiguous and threatening.
Yes, I was just about to say threatening, threatening.
Any feeling you have about an artwork is the right feeling. And it's difficult as well when you, like you say, when you're trying to like buy work. Is this very expensive? This is super cheap. Will this be really expensive in 5 years' time if I buy it now? And I think,
should I invest? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Is it like a house? Like, what do I do?
If I go to an art fair or something and see something, you know, like you say, 30-40 quid, I'll probably treat myself, because I love the idea of, you know, having a wall full of stuff. But essentially it's got to be if you like it and if it makes you happy. And there's loads of studies into the fact that, you know, having art in your house makes you happy, and the same with having plants indoors makes you happy. Then that should be enough. And I think one of the problems with the art world, or the art market certainly, is that there are, you know, 100 artists who are mostly white men who have been socially accepted as good artists who sell for a lot of money. And that system perpetuates itself. So no other artists are being kind of introduced into this like mix. So it's just these same artists making more and more ridiculous sums of money, basically. That's why I think Instagram is such a brilliant platform, because you have access to millions of artists who might not be represented by the big London galleries or whatever, but it just sort of levels that playing field.
And it's a really nice way to find people and to know a lot about them and see who else follows them and find people through that. And so you can have an online digital space that you love, and then also actually find things that you can then purchase and keep. I'd be interested in what you think about like building a collection and making the decision to buy things that are like slightly more out of that sort of 20, 30, 40, I'm at an art fair, go on then. Amount. Like, what have you purchased many pieces yourself? Like, what do you think about it?
Over the last year or so, going to art fairs and stuff, mostly it's like, that is £20, it's a poster, or little things that sort of price range. I went to one art fair which had this thing called Own Art, which is this company where basically you pay for the artwork you buy in 10 installments without any interest, so you just like pay it off. And those kind of things are really brilliant, I think, for making artwork more accessible. But you know, I still go to art fairs and you see stuff that is, you know, £100, and you go, it's quite pricey, maybe, but one day maybe I'll buy it. But you see other things that are like £5,000 and you're like, that's horrid and I would never buy it. The idea of how much art is worth is very much up for debate. I've worked before in auction houses in Phillips where art is going for tens if not hundreds of thousands of pounds that you could be completely not really fussed about. Or and this idea that, you know, seeing people go around thinking that, you know, buying this artwork for £30,000 is an absolute bargain because, you know, his work goes for so much more, so you can't really afford not to buy it. The idea that you have that kind of money to spend on art is sort of gobsmacking when you're in a early 20s career.
And it's insane because ultimately art is a luxury to be able to, even, you know, we're saying sort of £20 here, £30 that is a lot of money for some people, and it certainly is. The sort of younger you are, it moves into an investment, and you're not purchasing it because you love it that much. If it's, you know, you're not the whole amount of money, if we're dividing it up into how I'm spending £50,000 on the fact I like it and £50,000 on the fact it's going to appreciate an X amount based on what I know about this artist. It's not like I'm spending this money for the pure love of the piece. And I haven't really thought about investment. Obviously, love it. It would be worth £100,000 in the future. Absolutely love that. Yes, please. Thank you.
All of the things you think about the artwork that you like are completely true to you and valid, and doesn't really matter what the artist is trying to get at. If you find meaning in something, then that's great. I absolutely love this piece by Charlotte, because I think that the combination of textures that she's used is really, really interesting.
Mm.
That's not particularly deep, completely the right answer if that's why you like it, right?
Yeah.
And I have so many friends who I know would feel really uncomfortable if I took them to an art gallery and I was like, oh, why do you like that? And they said they like the colour. They'd feel like they were saying something really stupid. I really like what you said at the beginning about like, this is probably what heaven looks like, because now the longer I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe that is what heaven looks like.
Like, I love the water and I love swimming, and I was a water baby when I was younger. It just looks like everything, and that view out, you know, out the back, as it were, of the planets and the sort of desert, but it doesn't look desolate. It looks so warm, and yeah, it looks like a very abstract, like, hotel almost, like with the pools and the clouds. It's almost like it's putting vision to an emotion of just relaxation. And
I sort of view it as this sort of very relaxed sort of image of modern woman. I don't know what it is about it, but it feels very female to me.
Yeah.
And it's this sort of strong architecture, but this water and this soothing and this sort of strange space world. But there is something about it that makes me feel very sort of calm but powerful.
Yeah, it's vibrant and warm, and yeah, it feels very much like a person because almost of the colours, like it has that warmth to it. And yeah, the strength and the lines, I don't know whether they're clouds or bubbles, and I guess it doesn't really matter. We're in heaven, it can be anything. Almost feel like sort of thoughts, but also pillows. It's just I just all melds together so well, just to create a blissful feeling in me. Like, all of the things, like you said, texture, color, everything, it just comes together. And I guess that's what it's about. You see something and it makes you feel something, and that's why you love it.
Emily, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you today. Could you let the viewer know where we can follow you and hear from you and stuff like that?
Hopefully on stage at some point. I'm on Instagram mainly. That's where people can find me, just at Emily Bampton. And I post a lot of selfies and sarcastic commentary.
The dream. Thanks so much for watching. You can follow Emily in the ways written below. You can follow me at VerityBabsArt on Instagram. And please do like, share, follow, etc. And I'll see you next time.